Okay, let's talk about a new topic here, iPad pilot gotchas. We talked about how great a job the iPad does in general, and that's compared to previous tablets and previous avionics and portable avionics in the cockpit, but it's not perfect, right? It still has an internal battery. We still have to have some considerations for operating it properly. So we mentioned earlier the temperature range is 32 degrees to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's the optimum temperature range. It doesn't mean when it hits 96 or 31 it's going to shut down. It just means it's not going to operate as optimally as it would if it were in that middle temperature range. So because of that, we have to consider the environment. So of course, if we're flying in very warm cockpits with direct sunlight, there's a good chance that dark screen is going to absorb a lot of that heat and can cause the iPad to warm up substantially. And what will happen is, if it hits a certain temperature point, to protect the internal lithium-ion battery, it'll actually shut itself down in a protective mode, which renders it useless until the actual iPad cools down. So what I listed here on the left were some things that you may not have thought of that actually agitate the heat tolerance of the product. And the biggest one that we overlook a lot is a case on the iPad. Whether you're flying with a kneeboard or, again, an OtterBox, whatever it might be, that traps all that heat inside the iPad and doesn't let it cool down. So if you find your iPad overheating in a situation, or if you're flying in hot environments, consider taking that case off or looking for a case or a kneeboard that's a little bit less restrictive to allow more airflow around it. The next factor is if you are charging your iPad in the airplane, again in a hot environment, charging the battery, introduces additional heat into the product, which again can get you right closer to that threshold of the overheat point and possibly have it shut down. So these are also things to think about to do in reverse if it does shut down, which would be to remove the case, unplug the charger, etc. This next one's what gets me, or has gotten me in the past in a low-wing airplane up at altitude. The cabin was probably in the mid-60s, felt cool, felt great outside around the cockpit. But what happened was iPad was on a kneeboard facing directly into the sun, and that sun was baking that black screen, and it just acted like a giant heat sink. And eventually I looked down and the iPad was shut off. It had overheated, not because of ambient temperature, but just because of direct sunlight. So pay attention to how you have it aimed and how you have it mounted, typically on a kneeboard facing up in relation to the sunlight around you. And lastly is the airflow. A lot of airplanes have air vents you can direct around the iPad, so if you have an extra air vent directed at the product to help cool it down. Next tip is to never leave it in the airplane after you land. In the past, when we had paper charts and kneeboards, we would take them off and set them up on the glare shield and head into the FBO. Do that once with your iPad on a hot day and shut the door, and you'll come back in 10 or 15 minutes and find the iPad is quickly overheated in that direct sunlight and stale hot air of the cabin. So make it a point to take it with you if you can outside the airplane after you land. Now, we've talked to a lot of pilots that said, okay, I've done all this, I followed your advice, but I'm in Texas or I'm in Florida, and no matter what I do, half hour in the flight, the iPad overheats. It's just too hot, and the environment I'm in isn't conducive to keeping this thing cool. Well, fortunately, we have a new cooling case available. This is available at Sporty's, called the X-Knot cooling case. And it actually has some batteries built into it and 4 cooling fans that constantly direct airflow over the back of the product. It's the first case we've seen that has this cooling feature built into it. It actually really works. We ran some tests to see how long this would last versus just having an iPad mounted in the cockpit on a yoke mount on a hot day, and the iPad on the cooling fan mount. This kept on going just fine. Got warm to the touch, but didn't shut down. Where an iPad right next to it the same day quickly overheated. So if this is a situation, it's good to know there's a product out there. It's a premium product, costs about $199, but for those that need their iPad to continue functioning over time, this is really the way to go. And they do have models for the iPad mini, the iPad Air 1 and 2, and the iPad Pro. Another gotcha here, at this point, most people are in pretty good shape because this setting should be off by default. But a couple years ago, Apple added a feature called automatic downloads, and they're trying to help you out here. And what this does is automatically downloads new application updates as they become available from the App Store, thinking that, okay, if you have the Wall Street Journal or you have a music application, you don't really care when it's updated, you just want the latest info and the latest content. Well, from the aviation app standpoint, I think it's smart to always do your aviation app updates manually. You want to pay attention to what the new features are, what changes are being made. App developers are really good about adding the what's new sections so you can see what has changed in the application. So make it a point to go in and check in your iPad settings in the App Store setting there under updates and make sure that switch is turned off. Because what will happen, there's a couple applications out there currently that require after every single update that you open it up and download some new data, a new database basically. And so what would happen is if you had that app automatically update behind the scenes, you get out to your airplane, not realize it, get up to altitude and turn your iPad on. You then quickly realize that, hey, it's useless because I didn't update, or I didn't have time to download that latest data while still connected to the internet. That pretty much renders that application useless. So because of that, the main advice here is after any update, go ahead and run the application right away. So watch the screen, watch the application progress, circle around. It doesn't take very long. And go ahead and open up the application right afterwards and make sure that all your data and information is still there. We mentioned earlier that screen glare is a big issue. Not so much if you have the new iPad Pro, which does a great job with anti-glare properties in the screen, less reflective. But if screen glare is an issue for you on an iPad Air product or even an iPad 3 or 4, there is a really good product by ForeFlight, which is a big aviation big aviation accessory manufacturer. They have a product called Armor Glass, which is a tempered glass filter that goes on top of your screen. It uses an adhesive to apply to it. Not only keeps your screen looking really clean, but it's a great screen glare, anti-reflectivity screen glare function. So probably the best one we've seen, and we've used about 10 or 11 different screen glare products, and this Armor Glass product by ForeFlight is hands down the best one for you. Another one, an issue that gets kind of mainly new iPad pilots, the newbies, is the database issue. So if you first download an application and run it at home with an internet connection, you're probably going to see it works just fine. You're going to see all your charts, your data, because it's pulling them down from the internet. Problem is, if you don't go in and download those databases directly to the product, when you get up in the airplane without an internet connection, those aren't going to be there. And you're going to see the screen here, and it's going to catch you off guard. It's going to say, hey, you didn't download your charts. So it's very, very important that before every single flight, you go in and make sure that all your charts are downloaded for your trip. To make that easier, in ForeFlight, they include this pack function. So you don't have to go in and think about which states you're going to fly across and which charts necessarily you need. What you do is enter in your departure and destination airport here in the flight route editor. And then in the bottom right corner, you'll see this little suitcase button with a red badge. That's the pack symbol. And the red badge means you have data to download. Go ahead and tap on that, and it will then display a screen that shows you what all charts you need for that trip. And it also downloads the latest weather, TFRs, as we mentioned earlier, are very important, and airport NOTAMs. So if for some reason you forget to overlook a NOTAM during your pre-flight briefing, you'll have it on your iPad stored, and you can always view it later in flight. So make it a point before every single flight after you enter your route to use that pack function to prepare for your trip. Okay, number 8, some hidden features. This one's been around since the iPad was introduced in 2010, and that is the screenshot function. And what this allows you to do is press the power button in the top right and the home button simultaneously, and you'll see a flash on the screen and hear a camera shutter type sound. And it's actually taking a screenshot of whatever's on the screen currently, and it saves it in the photo application. You actually see a folder in there now called screenshots. This is very useful for those that use online web-based flight planning services to save your briefing. Another feature we like to use it for is for airport fly-in procedures. A lot of times, not like the big shows like Sun and Fun or Oshkosh, but it may just be a website with some basic frequencies and flying procedures on the website, obviously not available to you in the airplane. So go ahead and take a screenshot of it, save it to your Photos application, and it will now be available to you in the airplane. This feature, again, came out a couple years ago. It's the control panel, accessible from the bottom of the iPad, swiping up from the bottom of the screen. Allows you to toggle functions like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth pretty quickly. And you can do it right from any application also. You don't have to be on the home screen to access those. If you swipe down from the top of the screen, this will reveal a search bar. So you can search for any application on your iPad. This is very useful for me, as I probably have 100 different applications on there, and sometimes they're not organized very well. So if I'm looking for a pilot application or a name of an app that I know is on there, but I can't find it, I'll just go ahead and type in a couple keywords for it, search for it, and you can just tap it right from the search screen to launch it. So a great resource to locate data, contacts, music, etc. on your iPad. This is a new feature in iOS 10. Now, if you swipe from the left side of the screen towards the right side of the screen, it's going to reveal the widgets. And widgets are little application data chunks, basically, that are previews of the application and give you a little bit of data about it. Very useful for things like sports applications, news. You can run a radar widget on there, which is pretty helpful if you just want a quick radar view. And of course, some basic weather forecasts are available there as well. This next feature is becoming less used just due to the fact that the iPads are becoming larger and larger in terms of their internal storage. But for a while, when Apple was making smaller sized iPads, we would get to a point when we'd run out of storage. Apps like ForeFlight would come out with new features like synthetic vision or hazard advisor with terrain, and we'd run out of space to store all this data because of our other applications. And if you find yourself in that situation, you can use a helpful feature in the settings app called storage and iCloud usage. It's in the general section of the settings. And this will show you in numerical order in terms of what's using the largest amount of data, what all apps are installed and how much data they're taking up, both in terms of the application itself and the amount of databases installed with it. So it could be a good way to do some house cleaning, to go in and see some applications you may not use anymore. They're taking up several gigabytes to free up some space. And you can delete the applications right from the screen also, which is a great tool.